What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of On the Break. We have a good one coming to you. I hope everyone is having a great week so far. We'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. If you are on YouTube and you like this video, go on and hit that like button. And if you are new, subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you don't miss any basketball content like this. So let's get into some basketball. Trevon, we had some great scoring performances this past week. A lot of great players showing their skill and showing us how they can put the ball in the basket. So I have a few questions for you, man. The
Mhm.
first one is, are these the best scores that we have in the NBA of all time? And which scoring performance was your favorite from this past week?
Yeah, I think it's a debate that goes on pretty often. We talk about the past era versus this era, and we just debate about who's got the most skill. If this era more skilled as far as scoring and talent as the past era. And the standpoint I always took was over time things are going to get better and evolve. There's obviously more ways to score. A lot of things that were not allowed back then are allowed now. So I think that expands the range of possibility for things you can do offensively. Carrying was a big deal back then, traveling. It's not called as much today. It's just simply not. So that unlocks a lot of moves you can do, a lot of ways to get to your spots and score. So I think it's pretty obvious that today's, NBA is a lot more skilled as far as different ways of being able to score. We see different archetypes being able to score the ball. You have your typical strong wings and your athletic guys. That's more likely how it was back then. It wasn't a lot of perimeter shooting from 3-point distance. A big reason of that is because there wasn't a 3-point line, and when it was first implemented, it wasn't seen as an efficient shot. But today is completely different. So I think it's pretty obvious that today's players are more skilled for those specific reasons. And also, I think my favorite performance was probably Lucas, just because it's very unique of how he's able to, be able to affect the game in multiple ways. He almost had a triple double with that 72 points. And it was just, it's something that he always does. He's pretty much like a big point forward type. He plays the point guard position pretty much. I know they have Kyrie Irving. Kyrie's more off ball. Luka is always having the ball in his hands. And I just think every time I watch him play, it's very kind of unique when you look at like the speed and the pace that he plays with. And I remember when he first came into the league, I was one of the people that thought his play style would probably not translate over to the NBA because, there's a lot more athletic players here in the NBA. He wasn't seeing that same type of athleticism. A lot of players, a lot of better defenders, long, lengthier defenders, but he pretty much just came in the league and took it over by storm pretty much from the beginning of his rookie season. And we're just seeing his game expound even further every season that he plays in the NBA. And it's pretty much been the same story ever since. I think he could be a walking triple double if he wanted to. We're seeing him expand his game, get more continuity with Kyrie, and just seeing the different ways he can shoot from the outside. He can take it to the basket and be pretty efficient from that. He can get to the foul line, which is a big part of NBA scoring today. And he does it really good out the post. And he's just a walking mismatch no matter where you go. So I think just the way that he gets his buckets is a big reason as to why his performance was my favorite. I was very impressed by Karl-Anthony Towns, but the loss kind of took away from it. You can't lose, and you definitely cannot lose to Charlotte Hornets team at home
Yeah.
when you're the number one seed in the Western Conference. So I think Lucas was cool because we had all those performances and talking about, man, we may not see this for a little bit while. And then Luca comes and just does what he does and dropping that 70 plus point game. So I'm gonna have to go with Luca on that one.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. And when you look at scoring now versus back then, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're just a whole bunch more talented scorers now. I would say that, like you said, there's more skilled scorers. There were a lot of talented scorers back then, like AI, Allen Iverson, T Mac, Kobe, MJ, Kareem. Kareem had the most unstoppable move that we've ever seen in basketball, and no one else has been able to duplicate it. What I think it is, again, like you said, there's more skilled scorers throughout the league. There's just more of them, in terms of on every team, there are more players that are able to make certain moves and score different ways than there were back then, not because that they're just more talented, but because they have worked on those skills probably for longer periods of time. Now, kids nowadays are starting as young as like 6, 5, like
Yeah.
7, working on certain moves and certain movements. So by the time they get older, they're just more comfortable doing those movements now. And when you look at that, I would say it's more of a skill thing versus a talent thing. Again, you had Allen Iverson, you had T Mac, you had MJ, you had Kareem, and there's a whole bunch more. But back then, they probably weren't practicing certain skills or certain movements like they are today in terms of all these different players on these different teams practicing those
Yeah.
movements now.
And like I
And
said, a lot of those moves weren't even allowed back then. So
exactly. Yeah, and that's my next point. The game has just changed in terms of what's an efficient shot, what certain moves are allowed. Big men are able to shoot more. Like coaches aren't yelling at big men for taking 3-pointers like they were back then. Like the game is just
yeah.
played differently, so it lends to people having more scoring outbursts. That's just what it is. Spacing has changed now. You don't have a like two bigs in the paint and allowing the defense to just kind of sit around the rim a little more or sit in the paint a little more. I mean, if you go back and watch games, even in the 90s, there would be spacing issues in terms of guys would spot up inside the 3-point line. They wouldn't even
Yeah.
spot up outside the 3-point line. So,
It
like,
could be hard to
spacing has
watch if you go
changed.
back.
Yeah, so again, I wouldn't say that these players are just more talented, but their skill is more advanced in terms of more people can do more things across a team. If you lined up a team 1 through 15 or 1 through 13 or however many players on your team from back in those days versus now, there will be more players that have the skill set to do more things on the court to score from different areas on the floor than back then, just because that's how the game was viewed. And shots are just more welcomed. It's more emphasis on getting up and down the floor, getting up more 3-point shots, getting up more shots, and things like that. Versus back then, it was more of dump it into the big, or if you have an MJ, give him the ball. The triangle was in play back then. So it's just different offenses and different things that are allowed now. And more players just have more skill because they've been practicing it for a longer time. And the game is just viewed differently and is played differently. So that lends to that. But my favorite scoring outburst from this past week, I was gonna say Luka, but you took it, so I'm gonna go to Devin Booker. I think Devin his was pretty similar to Luka's. Both of them just really surgical with their pick and rolls, surgical with how they got to their spots. And this is one thing for all the young hoopers out there. When you look at guys like Kyrie, when you look at guys like KD, Devin Booker, Steph, LeBron, Luka, they're not out there just trying to break their defender down with a whole bunch of moves, right? They're really efficient and they get to their spots. They know where they want to go and they get there. And a lot of their stuff is simple. Luka, his first baskets were mostly layups. Devin Booker's first baskets were mostly layups, or he would take one dribble pull ups. Kevin Durant usually the same way. Steph usually the same way. So
Yeah.
that is something that I think young hoopers should take. Like, it's not about all these a whole bunch of moves. It's more about getting to your spots. Are you able to get certain shots off? Can you knock those shots down when you get those looks? Like you said, get into the free throw line, things like that. So, but no, my
Yeah.
favorite was Devin Booker, and he did it in a very similar fashion to what Luka did from the three, from the mid range, from getting layups, free throws, things like that. But close ones. I did like Embiid's, and I also just last night Steph and LeBron went at it. Like that was very fun to watch as well. So yeah, I would have to go with Devin Booker though.
Yeah, definitely. I thought she might have said Embiid. And B's been on a tear
That
this
one
whole
was good.
season.
That one was good
Yeah.
too.
If it wasn't for the minimum game requirement for these NBA awards, I think it would be no question of who the MVP will be this season. I believe I saw that Embiid can only miss about 6 more games, and we're pretty much halfway through the season. That's at least 36 games, I believe.
Hmm.
I think we're around 36, 38 games left in the season for the 76ers. So if it wasn't for that, he's a clear-cut MVP front runner, in my
Yeah.
opinion, because he's been on a tear of at least 40 plus points. We've seen Jokic really not have that same high level of basketball as far as the stat sheets go. We know he's been a walking triple double, and he was also a guy that was in those high 30s every night, putting up historic numbers as far as efficiency. And Giannis, he's had some big nights as well, but I also think a narrative part of it plays into the MVP consideration as well. But
Yeah, it
just the
definitely does.
performance, yeah. So I think that's why we're not seeing Giannis being brought up about in the MVP talks. But just the way Embiid has been performing and carrying that offensive load, he's been on a tear. I mean, I think for him, the biggest thing that's going to contribute to his playoff success is him being able to hit that mid-range jumper. We
Yeah.
know what he can do in the post. And because he's so effective and such a drawing force to draw attention from the defense, he's going to see a lot of double teams, which is going to force him out of that post. So I think if he has another over the top option to shoot the ball that's not right on the basket, make it a little bit more hard for him I think it makes him a little bit harder to double team because when he's in that mid range, he's operating from that free throw area, and it's very difficult to double team from the middle of the floor opposed to one side of the floor because you can't really balance it out as far as you could on like if he's on a right block, you can leave that long pass open, that long skip pass. But if he's in the middle of the floor, it opens a lot more things for the offense because you can't really force them one way. So I think if he's able to operate from that area, he's going to see a whole ton more of success in the playoffs. But yeah, I expect him to continue this tear going on through the regular season.
Also, yeah, going back to Embiid, if the question was the best scoring performance, I think I would go with him. But it was more of which one did I like the best, and I'm more of a guard or perimeter player type of guy, Embiid,
Yeah,
and that's not the knock, Embiid posting up. He sealed a whole bunch in that game, posted up a lot, but he also had some guard like moments dribbling
that's what
from the
makes him
perimeter,
special.
shooting the three. So that was fun to watch. Just me personally, I just like Devin Booker's scoring or watching him score the basketball that specific night a little more.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about the best scoring performance, I think it was Embiid just because of how dominant he was, how he, like I said, he posted up and sealed up under the basket. He showed his mid-range game, just facing up, jabbing, scoring with contact, getting to the line. He gets to the line a whole bunch, shooting the three. He just did it in so many ways. So if you're asking me about the best one, I would say Embiid, but my favorite this past week was probably Devin Booker's.
Yeah. No, I have no disagreements. What you said there. They're all special and unique in their own way. And that this won't be the only time that we see them have an outburst like this.